Hey Bio30s, I'm back for another lesson. Today we're going to be talking about the structures that help and support the developing embryo. So let's get going. Would you believe it? I left my pen downstairs again. I'll just go run and grab it real quick. I'm going to take the elevator this time. Hopefully it's quicker. Okay, now that I have it, we can get going. So, the structures that I want to talk about today are the allantois, the amnion, the chorion, and the yolk sac. These are all structures that once again will grow from that blastocyst. You remember the blastocyst from a few lessons ago that embeds itself into the endometrium with the inner cell mass becoming the embryo, as well as some other structures. But look what happens here. So we have our outer layer, which is our chorion. That's going to come from that trophoblast. The other structures, along with the embryo, will come from that inner cell mass. So the yolk sac, the allantois, as well as the amnion. Now, these are all very special structures that help support a growing embryo, as well as one more structure, which we're going to talk about today, and that would be the placenta with the umbilical cord. So these are going to be the structures we discussed today. These structures are responsible for a few things here. So protection, nutrition, respiration, excretion, because at this point, the embryo doesn't have the ability to do that on its own. Mom has to do all of these different things for the embryo. So then we need these structures in place to help the embryo get the nutrients it needs, exchange waste, exchange gases, etc. So let's start off with the amnion, also known as the amniotic sac. So this would be a kind of clear bubble that surrounds the embryo and then later on the fetus. So it's like a bubble. So it's a clear, transparent, fluid-filled sac that encloses the embryo, and it's only penetrated by the umbilical cord. So only the umbilical cord can actually get through the amnion. Now, what it does is actually protects the embryo from trauma and helps with temperature fluctuations. So one of the main misconceptions is that the amniotic fluid, the baby sucks up gas and nutrients from the fluid. That's not true. The fluid is there as almost a shock absorber. So it's there to actually help keep the baby protected and safe, and also keep it at a very good temperature, right? A very good temperature that's conducive to growth and development and things like that. It also allows freedom for the baby to move around, kick, things like that. And also, when you hear, oh, a lady's water breaks, maybe you've heard that before, what that is the amniotic fluid actually being released. So the amniotic sac, the amniotic fluid actually pops, and it is then released. That's what that is, that water breaking is just the amniotic fluid. Next structure is going to be the yolk sac. So the yolk sac, right down here, this kind of yellowish structure that develops below the embryo, it contributes to part of the digestive system, as well as making the first red blood cells for the baby. Also later on, it can help with sperm and egg development. Now, I mean, we've all had eggs before, most of us, I would assume. You eat the yolk, right? There's nutritional value within the yolk. A human yolk sac provides no nutritional value for the growing embryo. So there's no nutritional value actually within the yolk sac. It forms part of the digestive system, as well as some red blood cells, and then later on some sperm and egg cells. It helps with that as well. So next structure we can talk about here is the allantois. The allantois forms the foundation that will later become the umbilical cord. So it's basically the foundation that will then connect with blood vessels to form that connection between the baby and the mom. So that's going to be our umbilical cord. When most of it becomes the umbilical cord, the other pieces will kind of break apart and break down, but some of it actually sticks around and helps form part of the baby's bladder as well. So the allantois makes up a little bit of the bladder, but mostly provides that foundation to build an umbilical cord. And then finally, the other structure we'll mention here is the chorion. So the chorion will grow from that outer ring of cells, that trophoblast. Remember, it is the chorion that produces the hormone HCG. This is the hormone that you would test in pregnancy tests. This also maintains the corpus luteum, keeps progesterone and estrogen flowing throughout the pregnancy until about, usually into second month, third month, things like that. When the placenta is fully formed, then the placenta will take over with that. So the chorion 1 produces HCG. It's the outer membrane, and you can see here that the chorion actually grows into the endometrium itself, and the chorion will eventually become the placenta. So the chorion makes up the fetal portion of the placenta. So let's talk about the placenta. It's a very interesting organ here because mammals make an organ while pregnant, and that's really, really interesting because you wouldn't have this organ just normally. And the organ itself is a mixture of mom's tissue as well as the growing embryo / fetus's tissue. So those two tissues essentially meld together, the endometrium and the chorion, and they make the placenta, this dish-shaped structure which attaches the mom through the umbilical cord to the baby. So now things can be exchanged, nutrients, waste, things like that. The main thing that I've noted here though is the placenta is not a filter. So whatever you ingest during your pregnancy can affect the baby, good or bad. So if you ingest different types of drugs, different types of even medication that might be safe, prescribed by your doctor, it could impact your baby. So anything you ingest could go through the placenta, through the umbilical cord, and then to the growing embryo. Because the placenta doesn't filter, it doesn't say, oh, that's bad, we're going to keep that out. It's just everything can go in and then everything can be exchanged. So what's being exchanged? Well, we have nutrients, right? So we're going to have glucose, amino acids, fatty acids, important vitamins and minerals, all from the mom's blood going to the embryo's blood. We're then going to have waste products like urea and ammonia, since the baby can't actually do that on their own, their kidneys aren't fully formed. They're going to be exchanged with the mom's blood. So now waste is going to come out of the umbilical cord. Oxygen is going to go in, CO2 is going to come out. Also important hormones are going to come in and out. So estrogen, progesterone, as well as HCG. And then finally immune functions. So actually antibodies from the mother can actually pass to the baby and give the developing baby a little bit of passive immunity. So you get some antibodies and a little baseline of an immune system while you're growing and developing. So here's what the placenta looks like here. You'll see that the baby's enclosed in the amniotic fluid. Here's our amniotic cavity. There's the umbilical cord made up of arteries and veins from mom. The allantois forming the baseline of that, connecting the baby to the placenta. Once again, the placenta is a mixture of the chorion from the trophoblast and the endometrium, we see mom's blood vessels there, mixing together to form the placenta. Now, this is a little nasty and I don't really want to end on this, but some of you may have heard of eating the placenta, which is kind of most mammals will eat the placenta, so when they give birth, they'll eat the placenta afterwards. So now humans have thought, well, if all the other mammals are doing it, should we? And there's people out there who will ask to keep the placenta, they'll eat it, they'll sometimes grind it up into pills. There's been kind of ideas thrown around that there's nutritional value in eating the placenta, things like that. But according to multiple studies and multiple researchers, there's zero nutritional value in eating the placenta. So you don't have to eat the placenta, it's not a requirement. But it is kind of going around that people would want to eat the placenta for nutritional values. If you feel like that's something you wanted to do, there's really no harm in doing it, but I don't know if there's any benefit in doing it either. So that's the lesson for today. Next lesson, we're going to chat about fetal development. So now we've kind of gone through the embryo stage. All right, what happens as the baby becomes a fetus, gets bigger through the following 6, 7, 8, 9 months, and then finally what happens during birth and then eventually lactation. So thanks for watching, and we'll chat soon.